Dependency brings the region to you.
Hello, Trinidad and Tobago. I am Rachel from the Proyecta Foundation in Suriname, and I will be on Eye on Dependency this Sunday.
Hello, Trinidad and Tobago. I am Alexandrina, Executive Director of Women Against Rape in Antigua. I will be on Eye on Dependency this Sunday. Don't you miss it.
Hi, Trinidad and Tobago. This is Laree Shield. I'm the Director for the Center Against Abuse in Bermuda. I will be on Eye on Dependency with Garth and Natasha this Sunday. I look forward to you joining us.
Hi everyone, I'm Cassandra from the island of Grenada. I'm representing the Caribbean Association for Youth Development. I will be on Eye on Dependency this Sunday, December 11th. Looking forward.
And from Trinidad and Tobago, we welcome Nicole from Fire Circle to discuss the impact of technology on GBV, and Nadella representing the newly formed Caribbean Gender Alliance. Listen live on I-95.5 FM or watch live on the Eye on Dependency Facebook page or YouTube channel right after the broadcast of the National Service of Reflection and Thanksgiving at approximately 11:30 a.m. Eye on Dependency. We don't just share stories, we change lives.
A Caribbean connection, a regional vibration.
Eye on Dependency with Garth and Natasha.
Reality radio, at its best, where every life is a biography.
Sundays at 10 a.m. and exclusively on I-95.5 FM.
And streamed live on the Eye on Dependency Facebook page and YouTube channel.
Eye on Dependency with Garth and Natasha.
Good afternoon, Trinidad and Tobago. Good afternoon, and apologies for the delay. I know you usually expect us to be with you from 10 a.m., but we are slightly delayed, but we are happy to be here with you this afternoon to wrap up the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. We have a host of women who are going to share their experiences, their stories, their thoughts with us this afternoon. Good afternoon, God.
Good afternoon, Natasha, and good afternoon to all our guests who have been patiently waiting online.
Yes.
Thank you very much for your patience. There's the exigencies of the service, and we had a National Day of Prayer today hosted by the Prime Minister, and we had to, of course, give way to that. But we are here from starting now, and we welcome our guests in studio as well, Nikki and Nadella. Good afternoon to you, ladies.
Good afternoon. Happy Sunday, everyone.
Thanks for having us to be here.
Well, so welcome. It's something that we continue to focus on. And folks, those of you who joining us, I know as Natasha said, it's not actually, we'll be back to normal from next Sunday, God willing. But you can, as usual, find us on our Facebook and YouTube channel, Eye on Dependency. That's EYE on Dependency on Facebook and YouTube, or listen to us on your radio on 95.5 FM. This is a very important day for us. Natasha, without further delay, let's get right into it. We're going to be speaking with Alexandrina Wong from Antigua, and they're all joining us via video link. So you're going to hear from Antigua, Grenada, Bermuda, and Suriname. In Cassandra from Grenada, Laurie from Bermuda, and Rachel from Suriname will have all joined us. And let's make sure they're hearing us. Natasha, good morning, ladies. Good afternoon, ladies.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Lovely.
All right, great.
All right. So, you all can mute your mics again, and we're gonna get to you when Natasha. So, Natasha, over to you.
Over to me. All right. So, the 16 days of activism, in case you have never heard about it and you're living under a rock, essentially it is a period of time starting on the 25th of November, which is the International Day Against Violence Against Women, and runs until the 10th of December, which is Human Rights Day. It is a period that worldwide organizations, community organizations, groups, and other advocates and activists try to raise awareness about the issues concerning violence against women and girls. And in the Caribbean, it's no different, of course. Sorry.
And before anybody asks, could we add men to that too as well? Or is just this 16 days of activism?
Starting early with this boy.
No, I'm just saying before
yes,
somebody
of course,
brings
of
it
course.
up. Yeah?
Yeah, okay, God.
Because gender-based violence.
Yes,
Right,
correct.
so-
But there's also violence against women and girls, which is a specific
Yes,
issue.
Yeah. Without
But
a doubt, we have to keep
yes,
that in
and the,
focus.
the color theme is orange. So Orange Day is usually the 25th of November is usually called Orange Day, which is why you see us wearing orange.
That's why we wear orange
And
today.
some of the ladies online are also in orange. So let's go start with one of our guests online. Let's start with Rachel Grunfeld from Suriname. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
Thank you so much for joining us. Could you start by telling us a little bit about your Projecta Foundation and the work that you do?
Yeah, so Proyecta is based in Suriname and we are a right-based organization and we are working at the interconnection between human rights, governance, and democracy, but with specific focus on gender equality and women's rights. So as a rights-based organization, we look at processes in terms of duty bearers and rights holders. So we work both sides of the field to ensure human rights for all. So that's a bit about the
Perfect.
organization.
No, before you go, folks, let me explain to you what's happening here. We actually wanted to find out. We always hear from Trinidad and Tobago what we do on the 60 days of activism, but we decided to have a regional hookup today, and this is why you're hearing from some of these folks. We can get everybody because the time is a factor, but we have Suriname, as I said, Bermuda, Grenada, and Antigua in the house if you're just joining us. So, Rachel, representing Suriname, and Rachel, how prevalent is gender-based violence in Suriname?
Yeah, so if you look at the numbers of the prevalence study that has been done in Suriname, then we see that, let me just check the numbers. Uh, no, yeah, I'm sorry, just a second.
I hope I didn't catch you off
27.
guard here.
No. I just had to look through the papers to make sure I gave the right amount. So, lifetime prevalence for physical interpartner violence, 27%, um, 19%, let me just check. Yeah, so 27% for physical violence if you look at the lifetime prevalence. So, yeah, it's definitely an issue in Suriname.
Right. And we know the theme for this year's commemoration of 16 days is hashtag end femicide, which in Trinidad and Tobago, of course, is a major issue. Is it that way in Suriname as well? Is there a prevalence of that kind of fatal violence against women and girls in Suriname?
So I don't have the exact numbers, but I do know that it is an issue. I mean, this last month alone, we've had two cases of femicide in Suriname. So that gives you an idea of how much of an issue, how great of an issue it is in Suriname. So yeah.
It is. So for the 16 days, what has your organization been involved in specifically, or is it something that your organization commemorates or acts on at this time of the year?
Okay, so the thing is, 16 days coincides with our yearly Democracy and Human Rights Month. So usually during this period of time, we already have activities. that focus on democracy issues and human rights issues. So we do have yearly activities, but not only focusing on the 16 days theme, so to speak.
Right.
And how Michelle, what about government participation and recognition of this issue? How is the Surinamese government dealing with it?
So one of the things that we do at Proyecta is we do, as I mentioned, we work on both fields, both ends of the fields. On one part, we work with communities, for instance, so to speak, the right holders, but we also work with the duty bearers, and it's always a challenge to get the duty bearers to, in this case, for instance, parliaments, ministries, to mm, put the issue on the agenda, so to speak. But we have been successful in getting government officials, ministries to attend the spaces that we create to have conversations about gender-based violence. But we still have a long way to go. But there have been successful moments, so to speak, where gender-based violence is a conversation that we're having.
Right. I know you were telling us earlier that your organization is doing some very important work in terms of researching the impact of the programs that are implemented, particularly in rural communities. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so this is also one of the activities that we did this year. If you look at gender-based violence, so we did a study to measure the effectiveness of our awareness strategies, and it was to actually figure out the contribution of community awareness activities on knowledge and attitudes on domestic violence, child abuse, violence against children, and gender roles. So we did this, it was an action research. So while we were implementing the program, we also collected the data to be able to see what shifts in knowledge we have and how attitudes are shifted throughout the awareness activities that we did last year. We did it in 4 communities, and all the communities had the opportunity to choose actually which groups they wanted to work with. So a few chose children. We also did the activities and collected the data for adults, and adults in two roles, so to speak, as parents, but also as partners in a relationship. And we also, one of the organizations also said, hey, we want to see how this. We also want teachers to be part of the action research. So those are the 3 groups that we collected the data on, and we did a public presentation. And the importance of the public presentation is that we use that space to gather, so to speak. I'm sorry, lost in translation. But we use that space to gather up ministries, donors, members of parliament, and national service providers to talk about. So we use the presentation and the data, but also to talk about the way forward. And we also give a platform to communities to be able to tell their story. So that was the presentation that we did specifically when it comes to gender-based violence and
No,
violence against children.
no, Rachel. I wanted to. We had a problem here in the past with police officers understanding the importance of taking reports and treating all reports seriously. But now we have units set up to deal with this issue. What was it like in in Suriname with the police officers there? Did they take it seriously from the get go, or you all had to twist some arms?
Well, we're still twisting arms because one of the things is that in Suriname, we don't have a uniform way or uniform rules for taking reports, right? So every police department does their own thing, so to speak, right? So that's a major issue, and then that's a problem because it's we're leaving victims up to chance encounters with somebody that either takes the matter serious or not. So that is definitely still an issue in Suriname, and that's something that we are lobbying for at least a uniform way in which police are able need to deal with reports
If
or
you just
reporting out.
if you're just joining us, you're listening to Independency, and we are speaking with some friends in the Caribbean about their role in the 16 days of activism that's coming to an end today, or came to an end yesterday, actually. And if, for those of you who still having problems, because I got a couple of messages, so because sometimes the Facebook feed times out, I don't know why. But you can find us on YouTube, on EYE, on Dependency. So you can go there or listen us on the radio, Natasha.
Yeah, I just had one more question for Rachel before we go to someone else, and that was to if you can share with us what if there was any personal experience that you had that has led you to do this kind of work, because it can be very, what's the word I'm looking for, not only time consuming and but it drains you a lot, because you have to sort of set aside some of your maybe your personal feelings and issues, and treating with people who are not receptive to what what you're trying to say. But do you have any personal experience that led you to do this work?
Well, I think personal experience in the terms of violence, my own experience with violence. I don't have that experience, but what I do have is that I found uh, kindness. I think how I can explain it. I can explain it best by saying balance, because at Proyecta, one of the things that we do is that when I'm in the communities, it sometimes does get difficult. You hear stories from children, and then you hear the violence that they experience, and also from women. It does get, it can sometimes get heavy, but then I can come back to the office and then work out a plan on how are we going to fix it in the terms of policies, in terms of actions that can really make a difference. So I think that is what keeps me going, and knowing that I can try at least or make an effort to make a real difference in for the people dealing with violence. I think, yeah, that's to sum it up.
I hear you. Yeah, compassion fatigue. That was the phrase I was looking for earlier. Thank you very much, Rachel. So now let's go to Alexandrina Wong, who is out in Antigua. Good afternoon to you, ma'am. Are you hearing us, Alex? Alexandrina, are you hearing us? I think you may be muted. I see in your mouth moving, but I'm not hearing you. Alexandrina.
All right, so while Alexandrina sorts, oh, she's in?
She's talking, but we can't hear her.
All right,
All right.
let's go to Cassandra from Grenada. Cassandra, she's not there.
All right, well, Lori, you're up as the next one, Lori from Bermuda. Good afternoon. You hearing us?
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, we're hearing you perfectly.
What time is it in Bermuda right now?
Same time as it is
Same
there
time.
in Trinidad.
All right.
Same time. So tell us about your organization and what the work that you do and what you have been doing, if anything, for these 16 days.
Sure. I work for an organization, nonprofit called Center Against Abuse in Bermuda, and it is an organization that is dedicated to providing services for victims of domestic abuse and sexual assault. Basically, anyone over the age of 18, anyone under the age of 65. This is an age gap that we have here on island that the government basically does not have a service program for them, and so we provide that service for those individuals. What we also do is provide education in the communities on the prevention as well to ensure that there is awareness in reference to domestic abuse and sexual assault, because our goal at the end of the day is to end domestic abuse and sexual assault in Bermuda.
Right. And did you have anything special, any special activities for the 16 days?
So for the 16 days this year, we decided that we didn't want to make it 16 days. We wanted to try and use the 16 days to encourage people to make this a change permanently. So not just, okay, hooray, 16 days, we're going to do this for 16 days and then go back to normal. So what we have been doing is that we've been putting up information. We started with a newspaper advert, a social media advert, and all the local news medias. And basically, we were encouraging people to come together as a collective to utilize our voices in order to end domestic abuse and sexual assault, because we recognize that, it takes an individual, it takes us as our relationship wise, a community, organizational, and at a societal level, that we need to change our behaviors. We need to change our policies, our procedures, our laws, the way that we do things. And so we put out a call to everyone here on island to make that change. And we provided them with a variety of ways that they could make that change, whether it was listening and believing survivors. If you've never done that before, start doing it now. Encouraging your company to post information that raises awareness about domestic violence and sexual assault. Reaching out even to Center Against Abuse so that we can come and provide awareness to your group, whether it's your church group, a sports team, or even a workman's club or a school or whatever. We will also encouraging people to post awareness about these topics on their social media, speaking with your partner and friends and bringing awareness there about domestic abuse and ending domestic abuse and sexual assault, looking at writing even to your government and encouraging them to change unfair policies or laws that don't support victims of domestic abuse or sexual assault. Having men and encouraging men to stand up and take a stance against domestic abuse, as well as speaking to children, speaking to your own children about healthy relationships and modeling those behaviors in front of your children. And then also brainstorming your own ideas. And so we were just trying to encourage everyone, even every organization, to create a personal, relational, community, and societal list of what they would do throughout the year to end domestic abuse and sexual assault here on island.
If you're just joining us, you're listening to I on Dependency, and you can find us on EYE on Dependency on Facebook and YouTube. And of course, those of you on I-95.5 listening, welcome. And we are speaking with our friends in the region. So we heard from Rachel from Suriname. Now we're speaking with Laurie from Bermuda. And Rachel, Laurie, Cassandra, and Alexandrina, I know it's something that we focus on here too, and we don't know if it's done. So I'm just giving you all a little forewarning that I'm going to ask about human trafficking as well, because that's part of it as well. But Rachel, I'm going to throw you under the bus here, or put you on the spot, so to speak. We have a unit here set up in Trinidad and Tobago under the Ministry of National Security called the Counter Trafficking Unit. What's it like in Bermuda, Suriname? What's it like there? Do you all, Suriname, focusing on that? What tier are you all? If you know, if you don't, no worries. But what's it like in Suriname dealing with human trafficking?
So what I do know is that there is indeed a special unit that deals with human trafficking, but I must admit, and this is, I also, yesterday I was in another discussion about human trafficking, and I know I need to really look into it, but I haven't. Thus far I have not.
Yes, because it involves a lot of women and girls as well, predominantly, and so that's why I wanted to. But thank you very much for
Laura,
clearing that up.
is that a concern where you are in Bermuda as well, human trafficking?
It's interesting that you brought that topic up because I received an email about a week or 2 weeks ago from a police officer in reference to human trafficking. And he's just trying to bring everybody together now to determine what is available should there be a need. We have not had direct human trafficking, I would say. Um, I, while we say we don't have it, we actually do. Let me put it this way. I feel that there are a number of individuals in Bermuda, men in Bermuda, who bring women, in particular from Dominican Republic, to Bermuda, and they mistreat them and ill-treat them. And then they'll say, well, they were prostitutes when they were in Dominican Republic, so, you can do that job here. And so that's something that has not been addressed as yet in Bermuda, but I think that we will definitely be working on it come 2023.
Wow.
As you mentioned, the DR is Bermuda one of those countries that receives a lot of migrants from other parts of the region, and that we have found here in Trinidad and Tobago that those two things are linked: the migrants and the trafficking and or smuggling of humans.
We have a really tight immigration policy here, so we don't have it as rampant as that. But what we find is that men are bringing them here as their wives, so-called wives, and then once they're here, they mistreat them.
Right.
Wow.
And that's even
So,
with the Filipinos and other countries as well.
so you all are not, and Rachel, you could answer this too. What about every year the U.S. State Department does a report on the Caribbean and what they're doing about human trafficking. So I guess you all not on the radar at all, or have you heard anything about that?
Yes, we are on the radar.
Okay.
Usually annually, I will get an email from the U.S. consulate here on island, and they will inquire if I know of any human trafficking that has occurred over the year.
There you go. Okay. So,
All right, let's go to Cassandra in Grenada. Cassandra Mitchell, are you hearing us? Let us know if you're.
Yes, I am. Good
All right, great.
afternoon.
Afternoon. Thanks for your patience.
and ladies, if you, while you're sitting, you can take some notes. If you have any other things to interject, please feel free to do so. Okay. Just let us know, because I know we cannot have everything said in this little segment, in this little time that we have. So, Cassandra, welcome. Cassandra from Grenada.
Thank you. It's really good to be here. Hi, ladies. And I'm really want to commend all of my colleagues across the region who know we're working hard to alleviate the scourge of domestic violence in our region. Is really something that needs addressing yesterday. I know that in our various islands we have done a lot to amend laws. We have done a lot of advocacy on the ground, but we still have a long way to go in terms of alleviating domestic violence.
And what's the situation in Grenada right now as far as gender-based violence is concerned?
Well, I don't know if it's the same across the region, but one of the challenges that we have here in Grenada is the collecting and sharing of data around domestic violence, gender-based violence, violence against women, girls, and now we're seeing boys inserted into this scourge. But from the data that we have, I think that there was a survey done between the period 2000 to 2010, and between that decade, the Royal Grenada Police Force recorded 1,630 cases of domestic violence, and a large portion of that was violence against intimate partner violence, violence against women. So we still have an issue with data, but that is what we have thus far. And if you look within the judiciary in terms of the cases brought before the court, a number of these cases are cases of crimes against women and girls in Grenada. So it is an issue that we need to continue to address.
And what about the response and the services and or support that is required? What kind of infrastructure do you have to to meet those challenges?
Well, over the years, I want to give credit to the Grenada National Organization of Women and the Ministry of Social Development in terms of the legal reform that was done in addressing violence against women and girls. The judiciary in 2020, we had the new commissioner of police, acting commissioner at the time, creating a special victims unit, SVU, to address domestic violence, be it family violence, be it violence against women, girls, and boys. It's a fairly young unit, so I think there is a long way to go. I commend the officers. It's a small team of officers, and we are dealing with what is a silent scourge. I think over the years, I think what is going to happen is that we're going to start looking at where the loopholes and weaknesses within the unit are and start addressing it. But I think the core of the issue around domestic violence lies with societal norms and changing mindsets around domestic violence. Even if there is an open mindedness among citizens in addressing the issue, I think generally you tend to get the perception that it is a norm that has been accepted. So a large portion of the work that civil society advocates and even the ministry, the duty bearers have to do is work around changing mindsets. And then we may start really seeing a lot more impact of the work that we are doing, especially between civil society. And I have to continue stressing on it because a lot of the times we are the first point of contact when it comes to victims and perpetrators of domestic violence. So we have been on the ground and we are usually the liaison between the perpetrator, the victim, and the judiciary, legal reform, the ministry, the duty bearers. So I think therein lies one of our biggest challenges.
What about, as I asked Fidia, what about the police response to this? Do you all have special units set up in the police service, or you yet to reach to that?
Yes, a special victims unit that was created in 2020. Outside of that, prior to that,
2020.
officers attached to the different police stations will respond as they do to any other crime to reports of domestic violence. So now we have a unit specifically created to address domestic violence here in Grenada. And like I indicated, it's very young. So as they work on alleviating domestic violence from their level, I think as time progresses, we have to look at the weaknesses and the loopholes and how we can develop and continue legal education and reform and training where needs be and support, because I think one of the things that we tend to miss when we talk about officers responding to domestic violence is the impact of them dealing with violence on them, their mental health. So that is something that I want to insert, because when you take officers and you put them into our police force, we fail to sometimes, or we forget many times that they come from communities with the same mindsets that we are trying to address. So we
Right.
have had cases in Grenada, for instance, where a victim will go to a police officer and the officer will say to the victim, why don't you make up with the man? You guys have children together and make it serious like this. Yes, it's
Yeah.
very common. Then you have cases where instances where officers report to one particular case of domestic violence 12, 13, 14, 20, 30 times. And when you speak to officers, they tend to get frustrated. So while they understand that it is their job, one of the things that we in civil society will suggest is that we look at the mental health of the officers who respond to domestic violence and also changing their mindsets because they're coming from the same communities where we work.
What about human trafficking in Grenada? Is it a thing, and is it being taken seriously as well?
Well, just as my colleague, you will hear from the duty bearers that it's not an issue. I think it is, and I think that as grassroots advocates, we can relay that information. In 2014, our government created what they're calling a Prevention in Trafficking Act, number 34 of 2014. And what they're trying to do is to implement the UN protocol to address and suppress and hold accountable people who are committing the crime of human trafficking. So we are still in the very early stages. I'm humbled to have been part of the consultation around how we are addressing human trafficking in Grenada. So I look forward to future consultations on how we're going to actually ensure that that particular legislation that came into force in 2014
is actually enacted. And again, the relationship between civil society actors, advocates, and the duty bearers. Because a lot of the times when human trafficking cases occur, it is people on the ground who are doing advocacy, who are aware of these cases. So it's still fairly new, and as people know, because of the location of Grenada, of our island,
Yes.
we are strategically located. So in terms of human trafficking and trafficking of drugs, I know that we are on the radar when it comes to the developed countries, the UN, paying attention to what happens along our coastline.
Yep.
If you're just joining us, you're listening to Independency, and we have in studio with us Ms. Nicole Hendrickson and Nadella Riley, who we'll hear from in a while. And in the meantime, we've hooked up with some friends in the region, NGOs from Antigua, Grenada, Bermuda, and Suriname. You're hearing now from Ms. Cassandra Mitchell from Grenada.
All right.
We're going to take a break. Could we just take a break? And
Okay.
because we haven't taken a break since we
we
started.
haven't.
So let's
True.
take a quick break, ladies. You just hold on. And remember, folks, you can join us on Independency's Facebook page or YouTube channel, or you listen to us on the radio. So let's go to that break and we'll be back.
Some of us like to play games of chance, but remember, gaming should be fun, so don't get carried away. Play for a prize, but don't pay the price. Play for fun, but never for keeps. Play smart, but never play all. Winning isn't everything. If you or someone you know needs help, call our gambling addiction hotlines. Rebirth House 24-hour hotline 466-3146 or Serenity Place Empowerment Center for Women 794-7980. An initiative of NLCB and Eye on Dependency.
At Guardian Group, we've seen so many of our customers achieve great things. From key moments when together we've planned for the future to those unforgettable days when you've celebrated the rewards of those great decisions. So, it's no surprise that after 175 years, our optimism is stronger than ever. Because when you've partnered with people to achieve their best lives as long as we have, you tend to see the world a little brighter every day. Guardian Group. Live easy.
Go, sona. I come in. And don't give me no attitude there.
You have sheer no manners, boy. I wish I had your touch, boy.
You have to groom them. First, you have to target them. Scope them out. See if they have low self-esteem. Family problems, you know? Then you move in and gain the trust.
I like your glasses.
After that, you feel a need. Some of them like nice things like fancy phones, hairdos, clothes, food. It have ones who only looking for somebody to care and listen to the problems. You feel me? What's important though, you have to isolate them from the people. Let them believe it's all about you and them.
I care about you.
Then you get through.
Nice, nice.
Look one right here. Try thing now.
A message from the counter-trafficking unit of the Ministry of National Security.
Eye on Dependency with Garth and Natasha.
Reality radio, at its best, where every life is a biography.
Sundays at 10 a.m. and exclusively on I95.5 FM.
And streamed live on the Eye on Dependency Facebook page and YouTube channel.
Thank you for staying with us. This is Eye on Dependency. We're talking gender-based violence, domestic violence, and we are making a Caribbean connection this morning as well with our colleagues from Grenada, from Suriname, from Bermuda, and from Antigua.
And Nikki and Nadella, if you all have any questions to ask our colleagues too, please feel free and don't just
jump in.
Yeah, you jump in anytime you feel the need, to add, or maybe you would have missed a question that you all could jump in and ask. All right. So, folks, thank you very much for joining us.
Let's go back to Alexandrina. Are you hearing us now, ma'am?
I am hearing you, but I don't know if you're hearing me.
We are hearing you loud and clear. Thank you so much. Thank you for your patience. Tell us about your organization, please, and what you've been doing, if anything, for these 16 days.
Sure. Good afternoon to our hosts, coordinator, our listening and viewing audience. My organization, Women Against Rape, we started way back in 2007 due to an increased number of incidents in sexual assault and rape. It was a significant increase, so some concerned younger women from the legal profession decided something should be done. And so we started off. But advocacy and our community networks, those are our strongest points where our work is being done. We operate both at the policy level as well as the direct services level. Our services include community outreach and engagement. We do training, formal and informal training. And also, we have a helpline, a 24/7 helpline. This year, as we worked through the 16 days, there were a number of engagements because a number of local persons, both government and private sector, asked us to participate in various panel discussions. So we have been pretty busy. But on November 26th, we had a special event where we invited our social partners, those who we have been working along with through the years. And our theme looked at reshaping our future through the lens of gender and climate change. When we were fortunate enough to have a video message from UN multi-country office leader, Mrs. Tony Ann Rodber, and also a message from our in-country USAID person, Ms. Tabita. Our president of the parliament was there in person, and she took us through a path that we asked her to, how do we engage Parliament to have legal reform. And so we explored the entire area of legal justice and human rights, after which we had our You Remember ceremony, which we'll send you the pictures shortly. Looking at femicide, which is the theme for this year, I see that Antigua falls number 3 with 10.9% in 2008. That is the most recent one that I can find on the web. We have had some real horrible femicide acts in Antigua and Barbuda. One of the most recent ones shocked the country to the core. because it comes from this question: why do women remain in abusive relationships? And for me, that's $1 million question, because each woman has her own story to tell. That young woman was with the same intimate partner for a number of years. He had beaten her previously almost to the point of death, left her in a pasture covered with cardboard.
Wow.
When she recovered, she went back with him,
What?
much to the annoyance and vexation and everything from her relatives and friends and so on. The incident which took her life this year, her son was wounded and he had to be taken to the hospital.
So
And so,
Alexandrina, just now,
and
just take a pin from
again, I
here.
say,
She hear
when we
me?
talk in femicide, when we talk in intimate partner violence, domestic violence or intimate partner violence is one of the worst kinds that women experience. And let us really, really reconsider that $1 million question: why do women remain in abusive relationships?
Alexandrina, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yes. Now, let's go back a bit to this lady. You said he left her for dead in a pasture and she recovered
Yep.
and she went right back to him.
Yes.
Um,
That's why she's asking us to ponder the question.
yeah.
Why would she do that?
Why would she? I mean, wow.
What do you think,
that's-
God, as a man? What do you think is the reason for that?
No, well, he shouldn't, as a matter of fact, he shouldn't have been out of prison for her to go back to him in the first place. That is, I'm thinking, because he left her for dead. This is somebody.
Well,
So how did that?
she forgave him.
Huh?
She forgave him. She wrote a letter and she forgave him.
She forgive? No, yes, okay, she forgave him. But what about the police? And what about the investigation? This is somebody who who thought somebody was dead, and put them and covered them, as you said, with board and stuff in a pasture, right? In a right? So that crime alone. And so what was he charged for anything, even assault, attempted murder, anything at all?
Who bringing the charge?
Was charged for assault.
Who bringing the charge?
He was charged for assault.
Right.
Grievous body harm.
Right. But that's it?
That is as far as I know. I
Who are
know
we talking to again?
he was
Antigua.
also he was charged and he was remanded,
Uh-huh.
but it was while he was in remand that the communication allegedly took place with the letter of forgiveness and or pardon.
Wow.
Right.
And so I'm saying again, all of us in this discussion here today, and the persons who are listening, lots of times we tend to judge women based on what we think the ideal situation should be. But we have never walked in their shoes, based on experience in the work that we do. It is heartbreaking. Lots of times hear the stories the women tell you. But you know what? Our system is not supportive enough to carry that woman and her children through that period where that psychosocial and psychodynamic change is supposed to take place to get her into a headspace where she might be able to see things differently. Our
Correct.
systems do not support women to that level. So most times they have very little choice but to run back to where the abuse is happening. Did we have a shelter? We had a shelter. We had a shelter that kept people for long terms, and there was some excellent progress coming out of there. But like everything else, the person who was the main financer um, apparently fell into some difficulties, and the whole thing just caved in. And so I'm saying that to say there is no designated safe space, either by government or private, to house women in crisis situation. There's none. So that is one of the main factors as well. The other thing too is that we have to start teaching our women once they report any form of violence, start teaching them how to make a plan, a plan to leave.
Yes.
Because you don't just get up and walk out, really, truly speaking, not knowing where you're going, not knowing where the next meal for you and your children is going to be coming from. Some women have the means where they can rent an apartment, but psychologically speaking, going on your own with you and your children without other support mechanisms in place is very challenging.
Yep.
So I will pause there. Thank you.
Absolutely. No, I absolutely agree with you. I think whenever we ponder the question that you just posed, it has to be followed up with, well, if she's not going to leave, where is she going to go? And how is she going to be supported in her new life that she's making for herself and her children, if she has any? And I think that is the major concern. And as you say, the lack of support and services and housing and employment and all of these things that have to be considered, because I mean, leaving a relationship is not great experience in the best of times. So if there's violence involved, it turns it up to 10. I don't know.
I think there's also the extension, because I don't know if you all remember that case in Manzanilla where she had moved and she had a friend come over, and that's when he attacked her.
Right.
So I'm just thinking maybe her guard was down. She thought there was enough time. She thought she could have totally relocated from across the island. So even when you separate, you still kind of have to keep your guard up. Correct. And I was about to say even depending on the type, but I think once you leave,
that is
you
the
have
most
to
dangerous
make
time.
not only that, but you can't let your guard down. You can't make the assumption that maybe, okay, so a year gone and he will not come.
Yeah.
But he tackled the friend first. The friend went to get police, and by the time he came back, she was dead.
Yep.
So she got out. She left. And I'm assuming she may have moved from a different location than wherever it is he was. So that hypervigilance seems to be something that you can't stop.
Correct.
So this is where we will discuss technology in a while to see how we could.
But then I'm just thinking now, and you ladies online can jump in. Does our focus then need to shift a little bit to the perpetrators now? Because if you have committed an act of violence against your partner, how does law enforcement track your movements? Because we can't expect, obviously, the woman to know where you are 24/7 and to know that she's safe. So how do we keep track of the perpetrator and his movements and his thoughts and his plans?
I can speak to something like that. So one of the things that we have started to put in place is a multi-agency risk assessment conference. We're just at the very beginning. We're teaching other areas about domestic abuse, whether it is in the schools with teachers, health departments, all types of areas where you're going to have domestic abuse show up at the work, things like that. And so the Multi-Agency Risk Assessment Conference is called MORAC. What will happen is that this conference comes together when there are high risk situations. So it will bring in the police, it will bring in the court services, health department, and whatever other agency needs to be at that table to discuss the risk of the victim. And in that discussion, it's also the perpetrator and what is happening with them. And so at the end of the day, it's the hope that this conference will be able to put in place some strategies in order to maintain the safety of those victims, as well as to keep the perpetrator away from the victim as well. Whether it is, that means that there is some special monitoring, whether it's an ankle bracelet monitor or something like that that is placed on the perpetrator, or does the victim need to be removed from the island altogether, depending on what's going on? Does the court case need to be put in faster, and that person need to be placed in jail faster? So the MORAC, the people that are around the table, will be looking together as a collective in how to manage those high risk cases.
And I suppose the law enforcement will help in identifying what will be considered high risk. But I mean, in terms of our experience here in Trinidad and Tobago, to my mind, a lot of the femicides that we have seen may not have been considered high risk, because this young lady that Nicole mentioned, as you said, they had not been together for over a year, and all of a sudden, out of the blue, he pops back up and tries to kill her.
Killed
her. In fact, and seriously injured her mother.
Something like that.
And so you want to. What we've seen is that everybody has a little piece to the story. So I might have a piece to the story. Child Protective Agency might have a piece to the story. And so bringing everybody around the table and getting all the pieces to the puzzle together, that is the whole purpose of the MORAC, is that you are bringing everybody together in order to understand the entire picture.
Right. And I get that point. I value that approach as well, because the justice system that we all employ is an adversarial one, which does not help in resolving these kinds of conflicts. So I value that approach, to bring everybody around the table to see how this situation can be resolved and to keep everybody safe.
If I may say, thanks for that. Safety and security is always a challenge. Having been counseling these women over a number of years, there is a fear. There is an indescribable fear. And that fear, one of our colleagues just now mentioned the hypervigilance. It is related to that fear that the person will always come back to do them some harm, because during the relationship there is threat not only to the survivor but threat to their family members, and they will say things to them wherever you go or wherever your family goes, I will find you. Bringing people to the table, I honor that very much. But you know what? The whole cultural view and this whole power dynamics of ownership and belonging is still very much a part of our daily life. If something happens to a woman, some violence, the first thing people ask, what was she wearing? Where was she going? What was she doing in that area? So from the beginning, there is very, very little sympathy for the survivor. So the survivor starts off at a minus. And then when persons who offer services and support are not in a headspace where they understand the imbalance of the power, it becomes more difficult for the services that they give to be client centered and to be sensitive. So while we may be gathering around the table like mindedly, quote unquote, as it were, there is still deeply entrenched this patriarchal systemic movement that keeps women in subjugation and men as owners, as it were. So, for me, how do we continue to address that imbalance of power and that whole idea of ownership, so that I own you, that no matter wherever you or your family goes, I will find you.
If you're just joining us, you're listening to Dependency, and I know you're not accustomed to us at this time. Some probably wondering what happened to us this morning, but we're here because we had to make a little shift to accommodate the National Day of Prayer that came from the Diplomatic Center this morning. In studio, we have Miss Nicole Hendrickson and Nadella Oya representing Trinidad and Tobago, and on your screen you'll see Laurie from Bermuda, Rachel from Suriname, Cassandra from Grenada, and Alexandrina from Antigua. What we're discussing, 16 days, the end of 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. But we continue to highlight this outside, before and after 16 days, because we think it's something that's very important to keep focused all the time and to keep on the front burner. Ladies, I just want to throw this in here and ask this question. We speak about a rape culture, and I still try to wrap my mind around that term, the rape culture. And Antigua, Alexandrina, you spoke to that. What would be considered a rape culture? Is it how men we were brought up to believe that it's okay to rape a woman, or what does it mean by that? Because it's a term that always bothers me.
We saw a beautiful PSA while we were on the break. In some cases start like that, the grooming. And so there is this affection, superficial as it is, there is this affection, there is this attachment, there is this quote unquote love. So when the act actually takes place, it is not necessarily viewed as rape, because a relationship, as it were, has already begun.
So this is why some men think that they cannot get charged. So this is why some men think that there's no such thing as raping my wife. My wife is my wife, and I can rape her, and I can force myself.
Look at the marriage vows some people take to have and to own. That speaks to ownership. I own you, so I can do with you whatever I please. To have and to hold. Sorry. To have and to hold. If I
right.
have something, I own it, so I can do as I please.
And that doesn't go both ways, does it? It's implied, I guess. It's implied that the man in the marriage, if it's a man and a woman, is having and holding, and not the other way around.
Nadella, what do you think about
You
that?
all really don't want me to jump in. Whole radio program with marital vows. In case you ladies don't know, Garth and I are married, in fact. So this conversation is hitting pretty close to home. But I'm glad he asked. Are you having and holding him though? We are having and holding each other.
Isn't it like that?
Right. And do you all feel any sense of ownership over each other where Natasha, one day if you feel like Garth is not consenting, you could take from him? Do you ever feel that way, that you could take Garth without his consent sexually? No. Right. And wait, okay, so we're getting down to something real basic here. Yes. I don't know if viewers could see, Garth is, and this is across the region, yes, Garth is a strapping male example of, you understand? Yes, yes. And Natasha, good for herself, but I know if at any point in time you feel you could physically overpower Garth. No, and so that is what it comes down to. I mean, Alexandrina absolutely spoke to where, yes, there are things written into the marital vows that suggest. However, when we come down to the physiology and the biology of it, and don't get me wrong, I'm about to cross the exact point that I'm making here. Usually, it is seen that women cannot physically overpower men. Hence the reason why we think about rape coming from a male perspective where women are taken advantage of. Yes. However, there are instances where women, and again, we talk about hurt people. Mm-hmm. And so where there's abuse, it is not a one-off event. It don't happen. You don't have a stable, healthy, psychological life and then one day wake up feeling vibesy for children or to overtake some or to have non-consensual sex with someone. So where women have been overpowered, we have seen instances where women take abusive advantage of children or other people that so it's a power dynamic. And where men feel and because we brought up the example of rape in marriage, and women themselves, partners feel that it's hard to wrap your mind around being raped when it is we stand before God, a bunch of people in a church or a mosque or a temple, and they see us come together. So clearly, this is, and sex is part of the marital arrangement. In some cases, you ain't married unless you have sex, right? So it is hard for people traditionally to wrap their heads around, can I actually be raped in marriage? I am here to declare very clearly this morning to any woman or man who is listening, any boy or girl, once sexual relations are being engaged in, and this does not just mean penetration, any type of sexual activity without consent, go and report it. Go and get help. Go and it have nothing to do with marriage. It have nothing to do with, well, we now thinking about getting in with each other. I just simply, and this is across the region. The reality is that you all have brought together an amazing group of people this morning. We have these women that have been speaking for well, I have to say this afternoon. Sorry for the National Day of Prayer that push back the show. However, I mean, they have been working in the trenches. We have all been working in the trenches. We could give stories upon stories upon stories. And to me, sometimes the stories are more significant to listeners and to people whose minds we're trying to change than figures and dates. When you ask for country numbers, don't get me wrong, data is important. But we all saw how these stories that came up this morning it impacted you, Garth. God was like, so let me get this straight. How is it that she was able to go back to him? Why was he free in the first place for her to go back to, whether she forgive him or not? And in terms of consent, and again, consent across the board for women, for men, for children, and I am bringing children into the conversation here because we have laws, but we have laws, and adolescence is the time that a human being's body asks them to acknowledge your sexuality. Yes.
And our response to that has been laws, education, don't do it. Jesus is watching. Yeah, it is. And so, as opposed to, and I'm bringing it in here, and I'm going to beg forgiveness, Alexandrina, one time. We have mechanisms. All this time we're talking about response. We have not as yet touched on prevention. You see the health and family life education. You see comprehensive sexuality education that so many, and I'm saying it again in this particular way, voting blocks. People who control voting blocks. The religious bodies, we think it's only the religious bodies that have an issue with comprehensive sexuality education. But whereas you might get government people saying, oh, we really want to, acknowledge LGBTQ plus, and we would really like to see this pass, an individual minister in all of our countries, I'm not just talking about, I'm not speaking to Trinidad and Tobago alone, will say, yes, we support you. I as an individual, I support you. But they don't really support you if it is they know that a voting block, come 2, 3, 4 years time, come to election, that voting block is going to rail against them.
Correct.
They're really not supporting you.
Nadella, let me stick a pin, because you mentioned something there that I want us to delve a little bit deeper into. You said if there is an assault, that something happens, a sexual act takes place that you did not consent to, report it, right? I want to stick on that, because who in their right mind, knowing the attitude of law enforcement in their respective country, is going to report that?
Now,
and it's not
even go
just
further than that, Natasha. Let's define what a sexual act is. That's, I think, where we need to start. Because a lot of people, and I'm glad that Nadella talked about it, not only talking about penetration.
Yes.
It could be touching, it could be a whole host of things.
Yes.
And they graduate over time.
Yes.
And also, too, the different parts of the body that a lot of people don't acknowledge that sex happens to.
Correct.
Right?
And escalating those things to the level of making a police report.
Right.
That is a leap that many people are not willing to make.
Agreed. Because it's interesting, because even, like, for example, yesterday was Human Rights Day.
Yes.
And a lot of times I talk about the fact that a lot of people don't believe that they have rights. They don't know that they have rights.
Right.
It's only because when I believe when the LGBT question came up in Trinidad and Tobago, because people started to say, well, those people not want rights. Not understanding that we all have rights.
Regardless of how we identify,
what
we look like, what our skin color is, what our religion is.
So I think the type of education that needs to happen, and I'm glad Nadella brought in the health and family life education, because in that syllabus, there is the last section that talks about staying married forever.
Oh, God. Oh, God.
No, ladies and folks, if you're just joining us, you're listening to Dependency, and we have a vibrant discussion going on gender-based violence from Antigua, Grenada, Bermuda, and Suriname. They join us via video link, and we have in studio Nicole and Nadella. Now, we're talking about prevention. Ladies, you all can jump in here one by one, but what about parents and how they groom men, especially? I grew up seeing my father and my mother, my father beating abusing my mother. I grew up seeing that, and I promised myself that I would not be like that or be like him, right? Now, but there are some cultures in Trinidad and Tobago, and I don't know if it's in the Caribbean, where a mother will send her daughter back to the husband. It has happened. We've got reports of that right on this program, and it happens mostly in the East Indian community, where a lot of alcohol is abused, and when the wife is beaten, they go and they complain to the mother, and the mother says, girl, you married the man, well, you have to work that out, go back to him. And she goes back, and the abuse continues. So then we have to look at parenting and how parents raise men.
That's not only in the East Indian community, and I do want my sisters across the region to answer, please.
Yes.
But where that phenomenon comes from as well, what it's informed by as well.
Religion
hold on.
too.
Oh no, hold on. Yes, there's that, but it is a phenomenon where because it happened to me, and look, I all right. So you will be all right too. And that is not specific to the East Indian community in Trinidad and Tobago. It is a phenomenon that happens with generational abuse. So we have to, I'm just responding and acknowledging that.
Agreed. Because that happened with the next question too.
Nadella, because one of our safety plans that we have when we're talking to young ladies and things like that is, who did you tell? Who did you tell? Who supported you? Who didn't support you? And sometimes we hear, oh, my friends told me go back, my mom told me go back, or my dad, and just like what Nadella said, oh, well, in marriage, you're supposed to stay married. You made your bed, you better lay in it. Those types of things are said to women. And so one of the safety plans is pulling yourself away from those people, even if it is your mother, even if it is your best friends. Also, I want to go back to when we were talking about the young lady who died in Trinidad, and she was somewhere else. One of the safety plans we have is, don't tell your close friends where you are, because that guy knows your close friends.
Yes.
And that guy is a manipulator. That's how he got you in the first place.
Correct.
So your safety plan is keeping your plan to yourself, because that helps to keep you safe. And that might mean I can't tell my mama, because my mama's on his side, because my mama thinks I'm wrong for leaving him. Because I'm messing up, my children's life. But you're really not messing up your children's life. You're battering your children's life, because you're creating a space of healthy relationships for them rather than unhealthy relationships for them. You're creating a space where they don't see their parents fighting. You're creating a space where you are maintaining your safety and their safety physically and mentally.
And I want us to be careful of Lori, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I want us to be careful of over categorizing certain demographics. I mean, we tend to think that women in certain economic brackets are more vulnerable. Don't get me wrong, there is vulnerability, and there are different risks depending on where you are, how you grow up, what religion you're in, what your support system, like Lori is suggesting there. There are women who have double degrees, y'all, who are in abusive relationships, and their children will suffer the same as when I say the same, mentally it will have an impact, whether it is you're in a higher or low income bracket, whether it is you didn't finish primary school, or like I say, you have more than one degree. And I recall a situation where there was abuse in a home, and the friend reached out the woman reached out to a friend the next day. Again, very educated and professional woman. I said, Gail, I don't think you should go and bother to report that to the police now, because them ain't going and take you. And this is coming from someone who you would think has the sense to say, yes, I will go with you. Yes. So let's not start to pigeonhole. As Alexandrina said, you have to ask that crucial question. Why would women go back? And Lori hinted it. There is it's situational. You have to look at your own. Every single woman, man, boy, girl, has to assess their situation and see what is going to impact me, and if it is I really want to get out, how is it that what would be that plan? Cassandra and Rachel also said, in their countries, Cassandra mentioned that, yes, units have been set up, but again, we have to be very careful. The units that are set up are peopled by humans who themselves have been abused, and who you could turn up sometimes. So she was right to give credit, because there are people doing the work. As I'm saying to you all here, as much as there are people who are doing the work, there are people who are undoing the work. So to your point, Natasha, about when you go to make a report, and yes, I said it, but I'm also adding context to it. You have to get an army of people, because no one
can't
gets
do it by
raped
yourself.
or assaulted and walks into a police station as the next step. So you do have to figure out who your support systems are. We talk to children about, think about who your trusted adults are, and we ask them, and we go through Socratic method. If it is your mother or father hurting or harming you, who else you could go to? If it's your teacher or your aunt, who can you go to? And and let them work out that ecosystem, because your trusted adults are not necessarily your closest, and that is something that the same adults who are being assaulted have to work out. Who can you really trust? Because it is a serious point. Your ecosystem, who your network of support is, are the very people that could throw you under the bus, send you right back into the situation, as well as the police officers. I know we touched on trafficking earlier, but it's a very real phenomenon, trafficking. In Trinidad and Tobago, if it is that you are dealing with a police officer, immigration officer, minister of religion, a school principal, who you think you can go to make a report, these are the very people that will take you right back into the household that you just escaped from.
Sure.
There are people on payroll. If a police officer is earning $10 a month, they are getting 30 from the people, and I'm saying it clearly. Only my name is Nadella Oya. I work on Chancery Lane. I live in Maraval. And there are officers. We have to speak out against the system that is crafted and paid off. And this is across the region. If in tiny Bermuda, and I ain't saying Bermuda tiny in size, only big in heart, Lori. But in Bermuda, in all of these islands, every single island in the Caribbean, we are surrounded by water. It is an easy drop-off, pick up, move somebody. I mean, we've been doing it for centuries. When somebody, my grandmother and grandfather, the great ones, when it is they were ready to leave St. Vincent because they couldn't be together in St. Vincent, they end up in Gonzales. They got on a boat. You could get on a boat here and take people, children, and go with them, and women and young boys. We have to remember, we think about the men in a particular way, but it's not just men that are facilitating the trafficking or the abuse or whatnot. There are women that are very much compliant in the situation.
Of course, yes. If you're just joining us, folks.
You spoke about the victim of the who are of different social status, economic status, but there's also the perpetrators who, again, and I share your view, and I also would like to suggest that we don't kind of put into bracket what a perpetrator or a victim may look at. Right now in Grenada, I am personally dealing with a case where you have a candidate, now turned minister, who is a sexual predator, used social status to get victims.
That's right.
So we have to look at it from that perspective. Also, it's not just the men who are poverty-stricken or different ethnicity who are perpetrators of violence. I want to also jump on the point that Alexandrina made in regards to the question that society asking, why does a woman stay in an abusive relationship? If we go back to how we grew up, our girls and our boys, if we look within the context of Grenada, and again, Nadella data sometimes is required. Children are overrepresented in sexual crimes brought before the judiciary, and that is the only crimes that are reported. So I think it's even more concerning the crimes that are not reported.
And Cassandra, and ladies, and you all just dropped a very important point there. There are people so prominent in society that when someone goes to report them, police are all intimidated to even go and visit them and charge them. You can imagine, let's say, and I'm just using that term, yesterday the Chief Justice of Grenada or Bermuda is accused of beating his wife, right? From the time the police officer hear who it is, who is going to go and investigate and pursue that and arrest a sitting Attorney General or Chief Justice.
Like that in Grand Bazaar, he never spent a night in jail.
Who? With or in the last administration, yes.
But also, look, I mean, even to the point that Garth is bringing up, and again, my sisters could say if this is something that they experience. police officers are also perpetrators. So are you as an officer willing to build a case against your colleague who you standing up in the station with?
A lot of women say they will not go to a particular station because their friends know they're friends of the person who's doing the harm.
And this is in Trinidad and Tobago. Rachel could explain to the dynamic in Suriname. Suriname have a bigger landmass. But can you imagine how that is amplified in smaller land masses? Again, we talk about our small island, Eastern Caribbean, but there is giants that walking inside of there, right? So you're small in size. If it's a teacher in a school is a perpetrator. If you are a teacher in a school where a child comes to you and says that they're experiencing abuse at home, a lot of the teachers aren't going to respond, even though they're legally bound to make a report. They're not going to respond to it because they have to face the same parent when the child is being picked up on an afternoon. And in some cases, if in certain parts of Trinidad and Tobago, those parents are coming with a gun in their waist.
Yes.
So you're not going to report it. And so it is a situation that requires some you have to be real brave to stand up against, like you say, government minister, but you also have to be brave to stand up against police officer, immigration officer, army man, army woman. And again, look at the women who are in the relationships with these men who might be feeling for a minor when the day come, If it is your partner is benefiting as part of the trafficking trade, again, $10 is your salary from the government, 30 is whoever paying you off. As a woman, you getting to do your hair, nails, etc. You're not getting any that woman, you cannot come and impact my lifestyle. My man bringing home money. So y'all, it is something that is societal on all kind of levels. Don't think that you can run, as was just suggested earlier. You cannot necessarily run to another female for support. You have to be very clinical and assess who are the people that will rally for you.
And that circle of trust is increasingly diminished these days because you don't know you just don't know who is on your side then. So that just makes it tremendously more dangerous.
All right, let's go to a quick break.
Yes.
And we have to hear from Nikki and how and ladies, you can stay with us because we want to hear how technology now can play an important role in all of this. This is Nikki here to speak about that, and so after this break we'll touch on that and see if we'll have time for some calls. We're listening to Dependency right here on I-95.5 FM, live on the Dependency Facebook page and YouTube channel. We'll be right back after this break. Gary, just take us to a break, please.
Yes, girl. Our line here with this weirdo named Larry. I'm getting rid of him now. Let's take a selfie. It looking good, boy. I putting it online.
Hey, I thought you say you went to the beach with your parents.
Who's you?
It's me, Larry, from online.
Some of us like to play games of chance, but remember, gaming should be fun, so don't get carried away. Play for a prize, but don't pay the price. Play for fun, but never for keeps. Play smart, but never play all. Winning isn't everything. If you or someone you know needs help, call our gambling addiction hotlines. Rebirth House 24-hour hotline 466-3146 or Serenity Place Empowerment Center for Women 794-7980. An initiative of NLCB and I on Dependency.
I can see clearly now the rain is gone.
At Guardian Group, we've seen so many of our customers achieve great things. So, it's no surprise that after 175 years, our optimism is stronger than ever. Because when you've partnered with people to achieve their best lives as long as we have, you tend to see the world a little brighter every day. Guardian Group. Live easy.
Ion Dependency with Garth and Natasha.
Reality radio, at its best, where every life is a biography.
Sundays at 10 a.m. and exclusively on I95.5 FM.
And streamed live on the Ion Dependency Facebook page and YouTube channel.
All right, thank you for staying with us. This is Ion Dependency. Thanks for joining us on air on I95.5 and on Facebook and YouTube. We are talking about gender-based violence, domestic violence in the Caribbean, and we have some amazing women online with us. Laurie from Bermuda, Cassandra from Grenada, Rachel from Suriname, and Alexandrina from Antigua, and of course 2 vibrant women in studio with us, Nicole and Nadella.
Now, before we go to them, I want to just ask one more question.
Yes.
And let's start with Laurie. Alexandrina could answer yes or no. And Alexandrina, then Cassandra, then Laurie, Rachel, Nadella, and Nikki. Now, some men, we hosting them. Are men intimidated by intelligent women? Alexandrina in Antigua, because there are some men who just feel, women should be in charge of nothing, they should be in the kitchen. There are men still think like that to this day, that your role and function is to clean, cook, wash. Yes, well, let's start to work now, but when you come home, still clean, cook, and wash.
And can I interject? There's a trend online as well now, as we're talking technology. There's a trend on social media now with these passport brothers and others, who are these men who go on podcasts and on social media and have these horrible, just backward views of what women are supposed to be like, what kind of women men supposed to look for, and the same kind of backward thing you just mentioned, God. A lot of young men are holding strong to those views and advocating them to the highest level on social media. So
Alexandrina, let's hear you.
It's a very modern concern.
Men intimidated by intelligent women?
I thought I alone noticed.
Some men are, others are not. But just quickly to clip in on what the respondent just said, we have to understand we're living in systems with patriarchy, and it shows its face in many different ways.
Absolutely.
And some men feel that they have to hold on to their macho-ness, their masculinity, in order to quote unquote be a man. Because for them, anything else other than that would render them effeminate and different from what a man, based on societal expectations, should be doing or look like or dress like or talk like.
Cassandra?
Yes, I want to agree with Alexandrina. There are some men who are intimidated by strong, assertive women, and there are some men who are not. I've had the opportunity to traverse all those spaces. And if I may, because I know stories tend to work well with listeners. I remember some time ago doing advocacy work around good governance, and there was a particular very prominent male individual here in Grenada who on public TV called me aggressive. And it's a word that is used when referring to strong, assertive women who stand firm on their beliefs, their morals, their values, and certain positions that they hold on issues in Grenada. So, but what I've seen though is a slow trend in changing the definition of what a woman should be. And I really think the onus is on us as mothers, especially because it starts in the home, to really inculcate into our boys that there is no definition of a woman, especially those that relate to that patriarchy that we would have inherited. So slowly, I'm hoping that evolve into something where we don't define and put into boxes what a man or a woman should be.
Laurie?
I'm going to change your question around a little bit, God, because for me, intelligence is the mind, and I might be intelligent in one area and not in another area. So what I would say is that men do not like women who are mentally healthy.
I love that.
Because I can be extremely intelligent, but relationally, I'm not healthy. And so you got me. But if I am mentally healthy and relationally strong and relationally healthy, man's not gonna like me. Man don't like me because of that.
Rachel?
Well, I think we as a whole need to redefine femininity and masculinity, because it does. The traditional beliefs that we had still do exist. And it's not only to say that men feel intimidated by intelligent women, but it's also that society tells them that they need to feel intimidated. So it's not only, as Cassandra pointed out, it's not only the case of them by themselves feeling intimidated. It's because as a society, this is what we tell them that they should act like. So that is where I think the shift needs to come in the way we look at masculinity and femininity and redefine those roles that we have thus far set for ourselves.
Okay.
Agreed.
So.
Oh, sorry. To our guest in studio, that question goes to you.
Yeah, I think that mentally healthy piece is definitely it. But also too, what I notice sometimes is how when you watch children, how early it gets inculcated. Mm-hmm. You know, you see where the boys don't want to do certain things with the girls, and the girls follow suit, unfortunately. You know, so it's also watching to see how early it gets inculcated and if we can possibly switch.
You can tell us about afraid to act Nadella boy. The technology, Nikki. Yes, tell us about technology and.
Right. So what happened was, for me, when COVID was in our midst in 2020, I just got fed up and just started to read other stuff, and I found this term called online GBV, and now Fire Circle in particular has made a decision to use the term technology facilitated gender-based violence.
Okay.
What it does is it's the use of a device. You don't need an internet connection, which is why we don't use the online piece. Mm-hmm. So I could call and say, I better have my food prepared by the time you come home, unless. And in our amended law, psychological abuse is now a charge, right? So the use of the phone, the use of the smart device can now be used as a way to, because people and what we also believe is that if we could interrupt that, we possibly have a way of interrupting the physical, because if the person, as we talked about, has the willpower to go report, and if we can strengthen what happens after the report in that a possible mandatory counseling session, because in some other jurisdictions you have a court-mandated counseling sessions before you go back either in the house or before you interact with children. I had a great opportunity in 2014 where I sat in on 2 sessions with men, and you could see the grief within them that they can't see their children. We make this assumption that because men are groomed a certain way that they don't have feelings. And I was really fortunate time before that to recognize that, yes, men do have feelings the way in which all human beings have feelings. It's also the way we socialize into thinking, because a lot of women don't believe that men have feelings. Because if you read social media, you would believe that men don't have feelings. It's strange, but yeah. So
only one.
I think if we interrupt the threat, because I'm hearing in certain quarters that threats are not a charge and stuff like that, and I'm not sure, because I think a threat's supposed to be a charge.
A threat is a charge in the
DV
but
what
law.
I'm hearing is if he sends a church on the phone, that can be it.
Church is a crime, you mean?
Yeah.
It's a crime.
Yes,
Right.
it is. I know it is, but
Right.
people have been trying to dispel me, and are like, I know it is. Because I know if somebody come and threaten me with a cutlass,
Yeah.
I know to go and report it.
Right.
But what happens after that is a challenge. So if he gets into a program and understand that, as we were saying earlier on, not property, not owning and stuff like that, I think we could interrupt the physical numbers. Of course, there's several challenges with that. He could make a decision to go, not go. But I don't believe similar to maintenance, because if you can't pay maintenance, if they lock you up for maintenance, you can't pay the maintenance.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
That is something I find really
Yeah, it's a nonsensical
Yeah.
avenue to go down there. I think
Yeah.
there are other ways and means to do that. But I think they need to sit with the person to unpack all that they've learned, because there's something that they learned that they have to feel that they have to beat up somebody to get them to stay or get them to love them and all those sorts of things. So if you get to unpack that, then maybe we could interrupt the physical numbers that we have.
Okay.
So we add. Also too, I want to also talk about something that I think was kind of touched on, but is not a really conversation in circles. Caring, the kind of psychological impact that all of us are impacted by doing this work. Because that over time, we are going to break. And we feel because we deal with other people's problems, they don't affect us. That's a lie. And if we don't deal with ourselves, we're going to have a lot more broken people on this side of the fence that can't deal with the people that are coming to us. So those are two things that I wanted to rest on the table.
Absolutely. If we could go back to the technology bit, and you're saying that it doesn't have to occur in the online space, meaning
right.
With
It doesn't need
Wi-Fi and data.
Right. It doesn't need a connection.
But given the fact that our lives now, and especially young people, our lives are lived in that online space, and a lot of the talk that we hear and the conversations that we're having about bullying and those things are happening online. Is this a new how do we, I mean, obviously we're trying to treat with that legally.
Yeah. We get in there slowly but surely. Because we have the Data Protection Act, and we want the Computer Misuse Act coming on board.
Yes.
Yeah. So we have some legislation, but not as we've been saying, the technology runs faster than the legislation.
Than the humans. So even kind of traversing those two spaces, what is happening in real life? Like, how are people engaging with each other in real life?
Right.
That is impacting on their online interactions.
One of the things that I'd noticed in traveling is how people talk to people basically on the phone. The aggression that happens. And this is on both sides. Man talking, frustrated in a way, and the woman in a way that you can't believe that this is somebody that they would have possibly loved at some point. How you get there? Yeah. So I think, and as and what we keep saying is what's happening in schools is a reflection of what's happening in society.
Yes.
So this thing about remember when school had opened up, there were a lot of fights and stuff like that. I think we were missing the reality that, and not only that, they were cooped up for 2 years.
All of that.
Nobody. I'm very surprised that the powers that be didn't think that everybody needed a reacclimatization back into the space. If I didn't like you before pandemic, I'm not going to like you after the pandemic.
Correct.
That's
2 years away from you is not gonna liven up our friendship.
So Nadella, have this the Caribbean. Tell us about that, Nadella.
In terms of how the Caribbean Gender Alliance is.
Yes.
So
the
Caribbean Gender Alliance is CSO led. So in terms of, for those who don't know the term CSO, because a lot of the times acronyms just get fling about like we on a badminton court and people just assume we know what we're talking about. So CSO stands for Civil Society Organizations, which encompasses faith-based organizations, community-based organizations, cultural organizations. Some people will refer to them as NGOs, non-governmental, or NPOs, non-profit. They're
there'll be a squad of us that will not refer to ourselves as non-profit because we consider ourselves to be social entrepreneurs. We have no problem making money while it is we solve, social issues. It's just that legally we have to, we can't share any profits with any shareholders. Thank you very much, Natasha. It has to be reinvested into the business, and literally all of the people that have a civil society organization or that work with them, we are in the business of solutions. We're in the business of making the world a better place. And so the Caribbean Gender Alliance was simply an umbrella body across the region that will focus on things like violence against women and girls, or eliminating violence against women and girls. And I'm glad that you brought up the point earlier about, well, what about the men and the boys? Because I have some men who are, they may not necessarily consider themselves feminists. They may not use that term, but they're doing feminist work in the community, yeah? When they are standing up for the women and girls around them and looking at the issues that affect them. And when they are trying to coach and mentor boys, they're doing feminist work. Yes. But there's probably a kind of a quote around that word feminism that has not been understood by those men that are doing that work, and I have to absolutely acknowledge them, because there are men and boys that are working to ensure that women and girls get to enjoy their rights. We sometimes don't acknowledge them. There's LGBTQ plus community rights that we are looking at. All morning we've been talking about, again, men and boys, women and girls, but they are non-binary citizens in the Caribbean. And we know for us, we know that even to introduce that talk in the Caribbean is a whole other situation. But they do exist, and they are sitting next to us when we're in the taxi, when we're in school, when we're at work. So it's important for us to start to adjust not just our language, but our perspective as to how it is we engage with them. Because
we are in church,
yes. Thank you for that, Alexandrina. Yes. Very much so. And as Laurie was saying as well, you want to be able to be inclusive in a particular way. Everyone said it. Rachel said it. Cassandra said it. Alexandrina just brought up, the church community is a very big community that you will find that they will have even more. If we can't even begin to talk about Equal Opportunities Act in the workplace. The churches and temples and mosques are bringing a whole book that's telling you why you should not be a certain way. And yet you will find people that share belief systems but identify in a particular way. So we have to change that in the Caribbean. The Gender Alliance will also look at work around masculinities, around what femininity and feminism speaks to, children's rights, sexual and reproductive health and rights, gender equality, which is a term that is tossed about, and I don't think people really understand what gender equality means. And of course, gender sensitive education and training. It has to be adjusted from the school system, in the families and whatnot, so that we aren't being responsive all the time. We actually are proactive in the education and the sensitization, how we raise our families. But it requires, Nicole used the word disruption. It requires intervention. It requires unlearning. It requires learning new things. And again, we have to acknowledge that everybody in this room, everybody who's listening, even if it is you descended from the first peoples, you came to these islands via water. You came from somewhere, your ancestors came from somewhere that had set systems about how men, women, and even non-binary, there are first people, tribal people that acknowledge a third gender. But for someone along the journey, it made sense to say, man, woman, marry up, so do this, do that, teach your children this, be submissive in certain ways, supplicate in other ways. And so this whole power dynamic
and dominate in certain ways as well.
Yes, came into the situation that we are now railing and rallying against to find a healthy way that human beings can interact with each other. That's all that this really boiled down to, Yesterday was Human Rights Day, and it was mentioned earlier that, some people aren't enjoying their rights. The reality is that some people don't even know that they have particular rights. We had a workshop with young people on Thursday in advance of Human Rights Day, and they're like, oh yeah, we asked them very basic questions. Tell us the rights that you think you enjoy and the rights that you think you do not enjoy. And when you hear them talk about, oh, well, we enjoy the right to go out and freedom of expression and whatnot, but we don't enjoy the right to equality in certain realms and whatnot. And when it is we really started to break things down, it didn't have no rights that anybody really enjoying. You know, yes, you might have the right to be able to go out. Are you safe? Because rights come with responsibilities. Rights come in a particular context. Rights should be enjoyed by everyone. So if you think you're okay to go out, but someone else isn't, and again, I'm taking it from the teenage perspective, those are things that they will focus on, then you really aren't, as a society, you're not enjoying your rights. And so can you safely say, well, yes, I have the right to an education and I'm enjoying it? Because you're able to put on a uniform and go to school does not mean you're enjoying your rights and education, because that education system is not acknowledging, again, you're different, the way that you identify, your personality. As Laurie pointed out, there are multiple intelligences. So when we use the word intelligent, are you kinesthetically intelligent as an athlete or a dancer will be, or are we just looking at maths and English? You understand?
Maybe the word I should have used was assertive, but
assertive woman.
Yeah. Before we run out of time, could we ask our Caribbean colleagues to wrap up?
Yes,
and have
absolutely.
And so we give everybody a minute to say their last word, and then we close off in studio, right?
Absolutely.
So Alexandrina Wong from Antigua. Those of you just joining us, well, we've been speaking with Alexandrina from Antigua, Cassandra from Grenada, Laurie from Bermuda, and Rachel from Suriname. Alexandrina, as we go, we just like to get your final thought from Antigua, and what would you like to see going forward?
Thank you very much, Garth. It's been a pleasure sitting in the room with you awesome guys. But before I start, I want to ask Nadella, when is the next retreat? You don't have to answer now. You can message me privately. Just a few observations. We spoke about rape, but rape would be interpreted based on how your law in your country interprets rape. In Antigua, a woman cannot rape a man because it speaks only to penetration. So yes, so that is one thing we have to look at. I am very happy to report that another CSO in Antigua has recently received funding. They're coming under the Emerge funding from UN Women, and what they have put in place is services for perpetrators. So when we get a report and we speak with the woman, we are free to refer the man to that organization.
Excellent.
And they will render the necessary services.
All right.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Antigua and Barbuda has also established a law for what is known the Sexual Offenders Register. You can look for it online.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
You can look for it online, and you can find it.
All right.
There.
We will, because we've been discussing that here too as well.
We have had that
Cassandra from Grenada.
We have a parliamentarian women's caucus that was the brainchild of the President of the Senate, Honorable Alicia Williams Grant. And so we have been working along with them, also pulling up the laws that impact on the lives of specifically women.
All right. Thank you so much, Alexandrina. We have to cut it short there because we coming up close to the hour where we have to wrap up, stop the program. So let's get a final clue. What you say?
Thanks very much. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And we thank you too. Cassandra, closing comments from you? Cassandra Mitchell from Grenada.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to sit on the platform with all of you phenomenal women. I want to take the opportunity to encourage you in the work that you're doing, and to our sisters who are tuning in and listening from across the region and across the world. Continue to be strong. I want to close by saying this: whether we're talking about intimate partner violence, whether we're talking about family violence, violence against women and girls or boys, they're all founded in human rights. We mentioned earlier that there are a lot of people who do not understand what their rights and responsibilities are. And I think that all of these are founded in the basic fundamental principles of the rule of law. And again, that also applies to perpetrators, in that laws apply to all of us, even those that we elect to pass those laws. The laws also apply to them. And I think that is very important to know, and to encourage anyone who is a victim of violence, whatever form it takes, be encouraged. You do have rights. Those rights apply to all of us. And again, thank you for the opportunity, and good job, ladies.
Laurie from Bermuda.
Thank you again. I want to say a special thank you to Nadella, who has put together the Caribbean Gender Alliance. That is, for me, major, because in Bermuda, we don't have a gender affairs office. It's something that I have been lobbying for over the past decade, and we finally have a minister in place now whereby she understands these matters. And she has put in place, starting January the 1st, she'll be putting in place and that's Minister Tanae Frabit, who's Minister of Social Development and Seniors here on the island. And she is putting in place on January the 1st a Gender Affairs Council, which will be the first of its kind in Bermuda ever, for the government to put a council in place that focuses specifically on gender. And so I'm thankful for this group here that has come together and is encouraging others and each other, and it's sharing, and we're learning from each other. And so I just want to thank Nadella for putting together, and her team for putting together the Gender Affairs, the Caribbean Gender Affairs Council Alliance, sorry, because it's something that I will be definitely looking forward to learning from, gleaning from, utilizing the tools that you already have in your countries and adapting it here in Bermuda. So thank you for that, Garth and Natasha. Thank you so much for this opportunity to speak on your forum, Eye on Dependency, and I pray that this forum is continually used to bless others, to improve areas that we have failed in the past, and my hope is that we will be able to improve in these areas and not sit stagnantly by and say that, oh, well, this is how it's always happened. We need to we need to muddy the waters. We need to move the waters in order to make progress. So thank you for this show.
You're welcome.
Progress.
You're welcome. And finally, Rachel. That was Laurie Shield from Bermuda, and Rachel from Suriname. Rachel, how you pronounce your last name? Your surname?
It's a very Dutch last name, so don't bother with it. You can just go by Rachel.
Greenfeld, right. Rachel, yes,
the
close it,
translation
cover.
is Greenfield, so.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I also wanted to thank Nadella for this opportunity, and also all the efforts that especially Nadella has made to keep us all together as a group, because in August I could not have imagined that this is what I would be part of. So I am very, very thankful that I have been given this opportunity, because locally we Proyecta also tries to work together with all the actors that we need to be able to eliminate or at least decrease the number of gender-based violence in Suriname. So now to have this actually Caribbean platform that we can learn from, that we can share experiences with, and every time I'm in these type of discussions, I see how similar our communities are, and how similar we react to things that are happening in our community. So I am very grateful and very thankful, and I am also very hopeful for what we as a group can together achieve individually in our countries, but also in that Caribbean setting. So thank you very much.
You're welcome, Rachel. Thanks.
Thank you.
Could wrap up in studio here now with Nikki and.
I would just like to say that technology can be used for good, and also too for those of us who do this work, ensure that we also take care of ourselves while we do this work.
Yes, I agree with that one. Nikki, you preach there. I agree with that.
Very much so. It is a powerful tool. I want to acknowledge the power in this room, not just in the online room and not just physically. The walk with the sisters has been amazing. I have to acknowledge mother, auntie, big sister Hazel Brown. Y'all, we would not be here. Hazel Brown is a giant. And Natasha's mom. We give thanks for Hazel womb spitting me out. And I say that simply because we have so many women that have walked before us and men and that walk with us now. And we are going to be the ancestors for that new generation of feminists, male and female and non-binary feminists that will be coming up. And we have to do the work to make sure that we can make things better in 5, 10, 15, 20, 50 years' time. Because the fact that we are here now is because somebody believed in an impossibility centuries ago, because it had no way on a Sunday woman would have been on a radio talking about man and woman business if somebody long ago did not believe that women required a certain level of agency and persons of color. So again, we are living an impossibility, and we can continue to do the work to ensure that we have the impossibility of ending violence against women and girls. And my final was is to encourage the men and boys and the non-binaries out there, because I could encourage the women to go and make a report, but for those that feel that they can support the women in their lives and the girls in their lives in getting help, getting counseling, getting assistance, supporting them, and making a report that may or may not bring about resolution, but it's important to document it. I encourage, my final word is to the males and to any human out there that feels that they could support someone in ending any kind of abuse or neglect that they're experiencing. Let's do it. Do it today. Start today by just reaching out.
Yeah, the credit's rolling at there. So, do you want to call out the names of these ladies before we go? Natasha, you did some work there, and we want to highlight these ladies that you see in the back of us here.
You probably can't see it online. I don't know if you want to just begin the screen, short man, before we go.
So it's Ariana,
Suzette, Andrea, Utilda, Annalisa, Savitra, Soraya, Khadija, Ashanti, Kalisha, Amanda, Adina, Sharian, Tamika, Utilda.
We remember you all. And folks, we want to thank you, our loyal listeners and viewers, and you stay with us all the time, and we appreciate that so much. And we're gonna, in the new year, we're gonna rock the boat a bit. We want to have that non-binary conversation. We would like to have that. We would like to have people brave enough to come in studio and speak about it.
Yes.
I know it's not something that everyone is prepared to swallow and live with, but you know what? I have this one view of life, live and let live. And I am not about to tell somebody else how to live their life and judge them because of what they choose to do. Even the people who choose to traffic people. You know why you choose to do that. Natasha?
Yes, thank you very much to everybody for making this program happen despite the delays. And we will be back here next week, Sunday.
From 10 a.m.
From 10 a.m.
Yes.
With another important program. Please stay in touch. And we are happy to facilitate the work of the Caribbean Gender
Dear
Alliance.
friends, thank you very much for joining us. Love you. Take care. Awesome. Keep the fight going. All right? Yes. And we'll keep in touch. Okay? God bless.
Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, folks, that's it for us. And we out of here. Have a safe week. Be careful. Talk to you next week, please God. Take care. Nadella, Nikki, thanks again.
Thank you very much for having us. Good Sunday to all.
Yes, bye-bye.
Lopino La Pastora Cultural Committee, in collaboration with